Hello everybody, my name is Max and I am the creator of Lineball. Welcome back to the channel for another video. In today's video we're going to be going over the rules of Lineball in a little bit more detail, explaining everything that's going on, why we play certain shots the way we do, and how to win the game. So you can take away the rules of Lineball, play it yourself, let us know what you think, and tell us down below in the comments if you like the rules, if you think there's any small changes we can introduce, because Lineball is a game that I have been developing for quite some time. I've been playing it since about 2016 when I first sort of thought of the idea with my friend Chris, who is going to be actually the next Lineball match on the channel will be me versus Chris. And the rules have evolved over time to finally reach the point where we're at today, where I've got a version of Lineball that I think is quite competitive to play, but also hopefully for you really fun to watch. So I hope you enjoyed the videos we had on the channel, which was me versus Steve, and you can go and watch those now to see Lineball in action. We're going to be taking screen grabs and short clips from that game to illustrate the rules. But to jump straight in with what is happening with Lineball and how you play it, let's start with how everything looks at the beginning. So you've got the red balls all on one side and the yellows all on the other. One of you will play as the reds, one of you will play as yellow, and it will be your turn to alternate hitting a red into the score zone at the bottom of your screen and then a yellow into the score zone, and you'll return back and forth like this, starting from the middle, working all the way out to the end. Now the score zone at the bottom of the screen is the area you have to hit your ball into, and whoever has the most balls in that score zone at the end of the round wins that game. Now there's a few different things you can do to impact your score as well as the score of your opponents. So if your opponent has one of their balls in the score zone, you can hit your ball onto theirs, knock it out, push theirs out and take away a point from them, effectively replacing their ball by putting yours into the scoring area and taking one of theirs out. And that makes a big difference to the overall points at the end, and it's something you really want to strive to do. So when we look at this game tactically, it makes a lot more sense to try and put your balls sort of in the corners near the pockets where it's a little bit harder to hit them out. Anything really near the center is often quite easy to remove, especially if it's out in the middle of the table. Closer to the edges, to the edge rails, it's a little bit harder to hit out, which it benefits you. So closer to rails, closer to pockets, that will be a much more defensive shot to play. Whereas if your ball is sort of out in the middle and it's not near a rail, it's a lot easier for your opponent to hit that ball out. Now, one thing you'll notice about the way Lineball is played is that obviously we have two pockets in the scoring zone. If a ball goes in the pocket at any point on your go, you will lose that round immediately. And it doesn't matter if it's your ball, if it's an opponent's ball, it doesn't matter if it was one that was hit onto it. Any ball that drops during the course of that round means you lose that point. So you want to get it near the pocket, because the more risky you can play getting it near those pockets, the harder it is for your opponent to knock it out, but also the more secure it is as well, because your opponent's not going to want to play too close to it out of fear of knocking it into the pocket. The other major rule that we bring into play that impacts losing the game is the black ball. At the start of the game, you will alternate with you and your opponent who will spot the black ball randomly somewhere within the scoring zone. You can use your arm or a rule or a marker or even your pool cue to make sure it doesn't go outside the scoring zone when you're randomly assigning it. And wherever the black ball ends up is where it will stay for the duration of that match. The black ball cannot be hit. Like putting the ball down into a pocket, if you hit the black ball or touch it, if it knocks something onto it, or if it goes in the pocket itself, you will immediately lose that round as well. So the black ball is not to be connected with at any point during the game, or you also lose the round. So what you'll notice in examples from the game we were playing with Steve, and what you'll notice in future games of Lineball, is that there is a very strong meta to playing quite near the black ball, because the closer yours are to it, the more safe they are really, because you can't get them hit out by an opponent without risking the black ball being hit in that process. So this game really does promote high risk, high reward strategies, because if you play very safe, if you play it to just hit it into the score zone and it's away from the black, yes, you'll score more points, but also you have a risk of your opponent hitting your ball out of the area more frequently. So there's a good balance of attack and defense in this game, trying to capitalize on your opponent putting a ball into a very unopportune area, and also you need to be sort of knowing when to attack. If your opponent does play a poor shot and you can knock it out, then you should really be going for that. The other major rule about it as well is that you'll notice that we have the lines of the balls at the top of the screen. That's where you start from, and the score zone at the bottom. Any ball that is played and ends up in that middle area where it's not scoring you a point, but also it's not doing any harm, balls can be knocked in. So if you play a shot short, or if one of your balls gets knocked out into that middle of the table, you can have it knocked in by playing a ball onto it. So there's still a chance to save a ball that has been knocked out, which is a great sort of comeback strategy in this game. You could be 4 or 5 points down, and suddenly with one shot you could be bringing 3 or 4 of your balls back down the table and into that scoring zone, turning the tide of the match. However, if you play a shot forwards and that ball is knocked back past the line of reds and yellows at the top, it becomes void for that round and cannot be brought back into play. It is now deemed as out. What that stops is players just smashing it and hitting the black ball or knocking loads of their balls up the table. It stops things flying up and down. The game is really about controlling power, so by having this rule it eliminates the sort of chaotic type of shots that could be played. There's still a lot of room to play power shots in line ball when you're trying to push balls down the table, but if you have a ball go back past that line, it will be out for the round. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're trying to play a tactical shot where you are trying to knock an opponent's ball out, if you play it with a little bit of power, you might get it just back past that line and void that ball for the whole round, meaning you now have 7 balls on the table to play with, whereas they would have 6. So there's a lot of really good tactics and counterplay that you can do with this rule. And the next major rule is in regard to what happens if it's a draw. So if it is, say, 7-all, 6-all, 5-all, doesn't matter how many's in, but if it's a draw at the end of when you've all hit your balls on the line, that is when the white ball comes into play. And what you do with the white ball is you can set it down anywhere along that line and you can play it into the pack. Now when you play it in, your aim with the white ball is to try and knock out one of your opponent's balls. So if you've been playing red the whole time, you need to try and knock a yellow ball out of the score zone, and the first person to knock an opponent's ball out will then win the game. If I do it on my shot and I went first, then my opponent would have the chance to retaliate, kind of like in a penalty shootout in football, where if I score a winning penalty, the other team does get a chance to take a penalty to level it up, and then if they miss, then it would be a loss. So your aim is to try and knock the white ball into the area and hit a ball out. If you do that, you win. That's the condition for a draw. There's a few other rules around this as well, because obviously you still can't hit onto the black and you still can't pot a ball. If you do that on your go, you immediately lose. On a draw scenario, you also can't void your turn. So if you see things getting a little bit congested and you want to try and watch your opponent make a mistake, you can't void your go. You have to hit a ball with the white ball on your turn. If it hits nothing, it will just come back to the line and it will be your turn again. You have to make contact with another ball during your go, because otherwise you could effectively, if there was a lot of balls crowded around it, you could void your go just to try and force your opponent to make a mistake. If it's got to that point where it's very congested in that area, we want both players to be playing attacking and progressive shots, hence why that rule is in place. And the final rule around a draw scenario is that if after you've played 10 shots each, so me taking a shot, my opponent, for 10 shots, if nothing has come out of the scoring zone, it will be an automatic draw and the game is completely drawn off. Then there is no win for that round. And what will happen is both players will get a point. So if you're playing first to 10 points and you're 6-5 up against your opponent, you've won 6 games and they've won 5. If you draw under that condition, it will then become 7-6. You both get a point. However, if it is match point, so say for example I am 9-7 up, a draw cannot win me the whole thing. If I'm 9-7 up, it will count for 0 and it will remain at 9-7 going into another match, because we don't want draw conditions to lead to game-winning plays. But we do want to progress the score up, hence why if it's, say, 1-1 and one of those draws takes place, it will go up to 2-2, just to move the game on, to keep things flowing. We just don't want that to be the final match-winning condition. Also, if between 1 and 10 shots taking place on that draw condition is happening, and both players decide it's too cagey, everything's too close to the black, there's nothing obvious to hit out, the two players can agree on a draw. It's the same rules. If you agree on a draw, it will count for 1 point each unless it's a match point scenario. So if you're 3 or 4 shots in, nothing's moving, it's all seeming too risky, and you and your opponent both agree to concede that frame, it will then be 1 point each and you will move on to the next match. And I think that's quite an important rule, because I think early on in a draw scenario, you can kind of work out if it's not really going to progress into a proper person winning point, and it's quite good to have that rule in, just again to keep things flowing. So that's the rules of line ball. The final rule I'm going to just bring in here is to do with the actual line itself and balls that are played very close to it. So if a ball is on the line, does it count as in or out? Now what we do in line ball is it's a majority rule. So if the majority of the ball is over the line, it counts as a point. If the majority of the ball is not over the line, it counts as out. And that will be agreed either by both players on the day or a third-party referee. What I will be trying to do with future line ball matches is having that third party there to agree on that shot. And if you're just playing with a friend and you really can't agree it, you might just have to replay the shot, move the balls back to where they were, or just make a decision. You'll have to make a choice. I'd say if it is on the line and there is no wiggle room, I would personally class that as being an in shot. But for the most part, we've not really run into any problems with this rule. So if the majority of the ball is out, then it is out and it is not a point. If the majority of the ball is in, then that is a point. Now for the proper games of line ball that we've been playing first to 10 wins. This roughly averages out at about 40 to 45 minutes of play on the table, but you can play to any amount of wins that you see fit as well. I hope this all makes sense. If you've got any questions about line ball, please do let me know below, as I wanted to just make a bit more of a longer form video talking about line ball, its rules, a little bit of the meta as well, because I know with the previous video, we made a lot of mistakes around hitting the black ball early, and you might have been wondering, why even bother play so close to the black if it just means you're going to lose? And it's mainly around that high risk, high reward that comes with playing line ball. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, and seeing all the examples on screen of the different impacts of the play, and I look forward to sharing much more line ball content on this channel with you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.